that I was saying some things that were deeply important and suggested that I was a person destined to have quite a life and quite a career. But she finished with, "But God, you say these things badly." And then said, "Fortunately for you, the people of California pay me to take people like you and teach you how to say properly the things you feel." And she then became my mentor and encouraged me. Under her encouragement, trying to recognize the spark she thought she saw, I ran for freshman class president, and then was encouraged to run for student body president. One, and that kind of string of things, and then Kennedy coming along suggested maybe that is an avenue for you, especially when you
Because
find
people voted for you.
people voted for me and showed signs of having been inspired or motivated to go do the good things that I thought I wanted to accomplish. And when you realize that you can motivate a collaborative or a collegial group to join you in an alliance to accomplish something good, then it starts occurring to you that maybe elected office is a way to go.
So in my understanding, most people are clear on their sexual orientation when they're young. I remember being in kindergarten and second grade and fourth grade, sixth grade, junior high, liking girls all the way through. I remember in fourth grade when they would all like tease each other. They'd say, "Oh, you have cooties," you know, they would get away from me like that. I was like, "You're crazy. I'd much rather stand next to a girl than you," you know? So, um, so, but you discovered your orientation as a mature adult.
Right.
Can you tell us briefly about that process?
It's very hard to discuss it briefly because it's a lifelong process, but I never had a clue growing up. I wasn't that interested in girls until high school, when, for reasons that are unclear, I became avidly interested and had two very beautiful and wonderful girlfriends. And then, of course, I fell in love with my college sweetheart. We got married. We produced two wonderful children, and we had a perfectly wonderful heterosexual sex life that we both enjoyed very much.
So you're sitting there, you're in the assembly, you've been married to this woman for some time, and you're now thinking, "I'm homosexual, not heterosexual, or not even bisexual."
No, that's not really how it happened. I started originally thinking I'm at some period in my marriage where I'm just not satisfied with being sexually aligned with a single person.
Okay.
So
it was monogamy was the first
monogamy
thing.
seemed to be the problem. So I ended up having a string of affairs, starting when I was at American Learning Corporation with a stunning woman. That lasted on and off for over 14 years.
Oh my.
And then when I got to the legislature, where it's de rigueur to have affairs, I had 3. And but it was in the process of having those affairs that other things interceded and started raising issues that had actually started, I think, during the campaign, when at one of the places we frequented, there were young, attractive men who I could tell were gay. And they seemed to have a very strong affinity for me, which I originally took as the same kind of affinity that others had, campaign workers.
Well, you're a handsome man.
And I like what you're saying and so forth.
Right.
So I thought that was, but it turned out there were a number of gay people who now have come out to me in retrospect and said, "I was drawn to you because of your look. I thought you were charismatic," or some of the students, "I thought you were the kind of person I want to be," some lovely things. So I mistook that for just campaign politician related. And then later, when I got in the legislature, the Governor Brown's appointee to head the Arts Commission, the California Arts Commission, came to see me one day. He was gay, clearly, and he brought a young, almost unbelievably attractive model-like, movie star-like young assistant, 27 years old, from Arizona. And for reasons that I couldn't understand, I became absolutely fixated on him. barely paying any attention to his boss as they talked to me about, lobbied me for arts things. So about a week later, the guy came to me, the head of the commission, and said, pardon my effrontery, and I hope this won't offend you, but has anybody ever suggested that to you that you might be gay? I know you're married with kids and blah, 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 and you're assemblyman, and I have no right to even say this. And I said, to tell you the truth, no. Nobody's ever said that. And I'm curious, do I walk funny or talk funny or blah, blah, blah?
No, you're very straight acting.
And he said, no. He said, we have something called gaydar. And frankly, every gay person in the Capitol either wants you to be or thinks there's a possibility you are. And I laughed.
Or both.
And he said, furthermore, David, my associate, would appeal to anybody who has even a trace of gayness in them, and you were clearly fixated. I said, you know, that's true. I found myself just inordinately fixated. So those events kind of started triggering thoughts, and as they did, it became a snowball. And soon, I ended up having an affair with David, and with his boss, both. And then it became absolutely, irrefutably clear to me that was.
Was it because the sexual high was so much greater than your heterosexual sexual high?
That may have been part of it, but the truth is, to answer your initial question, I at first mistook this to mean that I am clearly bisexual. And what's the matter with that? Renaissance princes were bisexual. Throughout history, it's been common, and still is. So why can't I just be bisexual? So I went on having affairs. Then
with both men and
yes,
women.
Then I met a 22-year-old guy that I fell completely for, insanely for, as is the case often with men who come out late. And for a while had a relationship with him and the last woman with whom I had a relationship. Until she observed at a dinner with the three of us one night that there was just something that we were going to need to talk about that she could pick up, discernible. And that she wasn't interested in a kind of a triad arrangement. And I would have to think about it. So what that did was it awakened a conscience that often is not present when you're in a sexual high. And the conscience said, you could go on being operationally bisexual and having relationships with women, but they think you want to marry them or you should have children together, and they have a different evolutionary imperative, and you just need to decide. And then I thought, well, it's not really something you decide. You either kind of are probably or you're not. At the time, that was my view. And so I decided at that point, I think I've probably always been gay. And I talked to some people who said it was common for people born in my time to deeply repress it. Most weren't successful and always knew under the surface, but they still married and had children to be conventional.
You know, I can't, even today, I can't imagine choosing it. If you were anywhere near the middle, I can't imagine choosing gay over straight because of the social repercussions.
Well, and it's for that very reason when I realized that I was quite willing to do that. In fact, I felt I had to do that. That's when it became really clear. Because why would I wreck my career, wreck a marriage with a woman I adored, disenfranchise my children, possibly, and make myself, ineligible to be an educator for which I thought I was born. So yeah, when I finally came to that realization, it wasn't a decision, it was a realization that's so true. I need to go do that. So
You mean to go back and save my marriage?
No, I made the decision to go forward and risk.
Okay.
But while I was in the process of trying to decide how to have those conversations, I was outed by one person to the family and by another at work. And at first I was...
Why did they out you? What was their motivation?
Well, the first was a young man who spotted me at a gay event in Los Angeles who had been a worker on my campaigns all the time he was growing up. His parents were big fans. raised them precinct walking and coming to my events. He was gay and a contemporary of my daughter at high school, and came up to me and said, "Well, Assemblyman, it looks like we have a little secret." And I said, "Well, I hope it is, because I'm having, conversations with myself, and I need to work through this." He proceeded to assure me that that would be the case, and then got in the car and went home and told my daughter. That precipitated the discussions with the family. And then not too long afterward, a former assemblyman and roommate of mine, who coveted my job, went to the president and told him that the word was that I was not only gay, but likely becoming an activist, and that I would embarrass the industry. So the president called me in and said, "I know this can't be true."
Of the
Cable's Trade Association, Spencer Cates, and he said, "This can't be true, blah, blah, blah." And I said, "No, to the contrary it is. I'm sorry it came out this way. The reason we haven't had the discussion is because I'm still trying to decide if it's true, and hadn't had the discussions with my family yet." So I said, "How do you feel about it?" And he said, "Well, I feel like you're a upstanding guy, and you do a fine job for us, and I don't think it should make any difference. It may end up having an impact on our board or somebody, but let's see if we can get through this. I want to support you."
That's very
Yeah.
open-minded of him. That's good.
And then when I had the conversation with my daughter and my wife, they were shocked. My wife said she'd never had a clue.
Inkling, yeah.
And but they too were supportive at first. And then, like a lot of guys that I now find have gone through this, each of them went through a period where voices crept into the narrative. And the voices said things like, "It's very possible that he, like others, knew from the beginning he was gay and simply married you to foster a political
To be his
career,
beard.
to have children, to be a beard." And at first that was the only thing that made sense to Linda. How else does this thing work? How do you just all of a sudden have great sex with a guy and he decides he's gay? At first, he never does anything erratic or irresponsible. So why would he do this? Because it seems erratic and irresponsible.
Kind of, you could see that.
Yeah, of course I could see that. I couldn't have been more empathetic. Which is what led me to the most pivotal decision in the whole thing, and that was to remain devoted to her and to my children, even more so than ever before in my political career, for the rest of my life. So they would get it, that it never had been a charade or theater. This was a true revelation. And irrespective of that, I understood that I'm a husband and a father. So Linda and I are still close all these years later.
Is she remarried?
She never dated, nor remarried, which was a source of great pain and guilt for me for a while. And finally, it was my kids who helped turn that around. They realized that she's 9 hours apart from me in age, and a Democrat and a master's, brilliant, and that she has the same life choices and responsibility for her own life as I do. And once we're given a blow, and I've had mine and she's had hers, then you have to pick yourself up and go on.
And it seems okay and appropriate that she's choosing to live the life of a widow.
Well, she also had, my parents were gone early, but she had aging parents that she then decided to take care of in a very selfless way. And so she was distracted by her own sense of responsibility to our children and to her parents.
I understand.
Plus she was an only child who I think characterized herself as a one-man woman. You know, I married this guy, I took the vows, I take them seriously, and I'm not really into starting the dating thing again.
What gay causes are you involved in? And where were you married? You're married to the man who's your partner.
Right.
So where were you married? Because it was in 2008, which means it wasn't legal in California.
Before that, we had come to the decision about the 7th year we were together that we were clearly that we wanted to be together the rest of our lives. And so we had a commitment ceremony with all of our families and friends in Napa. And Sheila Kuehl, the gay senator, presided. Then in '08, we decided to get married when Gavin Newsom made it possible in San Francisco, and thought that might have potential to ultimately lead to a legal marriage. As you know, it didn't. The court abdicated those marriages. So then on the first day it was legal in California, we were actually asked by members of Equality California and others to marry on that first day. We would have married either that day or soon anyway, so that we could help be a part of the managing the press attention and maximizing the local public relations elements of
Because you were a couple that
highly visible.
not only highly visible, but also your relationship spoke well of what y'all were trying to say.
Precisely. Or we wouldn't have been asked. Yeah. If there was any chance that ours would fall apart, although there was an issue because I'm 22 years older than my partner.
Oh, wow.
He will be 50 in June, and I'll be 72.
Wow, he's younger than I am.
Yeah. So while that was an issue when everybody testified to the kind of permanence of our relationship.